Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. The morning air carried a sharp chill, though the sky was clear, almost serene. But there was nothing calm about what was brewing beneath the surface. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. It was as if the city itself was holding its breath, sensing that something dark was about to happen. Wilmington was a city on the edge, not because of an upcoming storm, but because of a different kind of brewing disaster. One carefully orchestrated in the offices of the News and Observer. Inside the bustling newsroom, sheets of freshly printed newspapers piled up, ready to be distributed. At first glance, they seemed like any other edition of daily news, but there was something different about these. This edition wasn't filled with typical political debates or social commentary. No, this one had something far more dangerous. It had cartoons. Dark, sinister illustrations of black men in power, depicted as monsters, threats to the very existence of white Wilmingtonians. The ink was barely dry, but the damage had already been done. The seeds of fear had been planted weeks earlier. But what was about to happen, which was to change history forever? In this video, let's find out. Before slavery was banned in the United States, pro-slavery cartoons were normal. They were used to ensure slavery continued and to give slave owners reasons to enslave more black slaves. That's because those cartoons wrongly portrayed black slaves as inferior, without intellectual power, and requiring masters for a better life. However, after slavery was banned, those cartoons turned from pro-slavery to racist. Back in the 1890s, the editorial offices of the News and Observer were not merely reporting the news, they were creating it, feeding off the growing racial tensions in Wilmington, North Carolina. Josephus Daniels, the editor, knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just selling newspapers, he was weaponizing them. Deep within the pages of these daily editions were images that would forever change the city. A cartoon, just ink on paper, but far more powerful than any speech or article. It depicted a creature, twisted, grotesque, its bat-like wings stretched wide, casting a shadow over the state of North Carolina. Across its wings were the words, "Negro Rule," as if warning of an upcoming disaster if the black population remained in power. The caricature wasn't just an insult, it was a psychological blow, feeding white fears, amplifying anxieties, and preparing the minds of the people for something violent, something inevitable. This wasn't the first of these cartoons. For months, images like this had been flooding the streets of Wilmington, delivered daily to the doorsteps of white citizens. Each one painted black men in power as incompetent, dangerous, and even predatory. The imagery was clear, simple, and effective. Black leadership wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a threat to the very fabric of white society. But it wasn't just about political incompetence. The cartoons took a darker turn, tapping into the most primal fears of white men, the fear of interracial marriages. Another cartoon showed a black man, leering and predatory, his grotesque features exaggerated beyond recognition, his gaze fixed on a vulnerable white woman. The message was chillingly clear. Black men in power meant danger for white women. The idea that black men were sexually predatory was a weapon, designed to inflame, designed to justify violence. Other cartoons published in the News and Observer frequently portrayed black politicians as lazy, incompetent, or corrupt. In these illustrations, black officials were often shown lounging in government offices, neglecting their duties, while white citizens suffered the consequences. These images used exaggerated racial stereotypes, with black men depicted with oversized lips, unkempt hair, and careless appearances, reinforcing the belief that black men were unfit for leadership roles. Such cartoons were intended to delegitimize black political participation, fostering the belief that black governance would result in the breakdown of society and public order. By linking black political power to chaos, the News and Observer built the case for violent intervention. Here's a reminder to please support us so we can make more videos for you by subscribing to our channel and giving the video a like. We want to build a strong community and we need your support. Let's continue now. The air may have been still on that morning in November 1898, but Wilmington was anything but calm. The white citizens of the city had been primed for months by the media they consumed daily. Cartoons like these had planted the idea that action, violent, decisive action, was not only justified but necessary to protect their homes, their families, and their way of life. And as those newspapers hit the streets, the city was ready to explode. This wasn't just a spontaneous burst of violence. It had been carefully planned. The white supremacists in Wilmington had already made their moves behind the scenes, and the propaganda campaign led by the News and Observer had done its job. The white citizens of Wilmington had been convinced that they were under siege, that their city was being overrun by an incompetent and dangerous black political class. They had been convinced that if they didn't act, if they didn't take their city back, they would lose everything. On the morning of November 10th, 1898, a white mob of over 2,000 men, organized by Democratic leaders such as Alfred Moore Waddell, marched through Wilmington's streets. Their first target was the Daily Record, a black-owned newspaper run by Alexander Manly, who had written an editorial challenging the white supremacist narrative of black men as sexual predators. His editorial had particularly inflamed white supremacists. The mob set fire to the newspaper's office, destroying the building entirely. This initial act of violence was just the beginning. The mob continued through the city, targeting prominent black citizens, businesses, and homes. Armed with rifles and other weapons, the mob indiscriminately shot black residents in the streets. Black men were the primary targets, but black women and children were also caught in the violence. Many were forced to flee their homes, seeking refuge in the surrounding swamps and woods. Estimates of the death toll vary, with contemporary reports suggesting that at least 60 black citizens were killed, although the actual number may be significantly higher. The lack of official documentation and the chaos of the day make it difficult to determine an accurate count. Some historians believe that the true number of victims could be much larger, as many bodies were reportedly dumped into the nearby Cape Fear River. While the massacre raged, the white mob also sought to dismantle Wilmington's multiracial government. They stormed City Hall and forced elected officials to resign at gunpoint. Black aldermen and other officials were either killed, forced out of office, or driven out of the city. White supremacist leaders, including Alfred Moore Waddell, took control of the city government and declared themselves the new leaders of Wilmington. Waddell, who became mayor after the coup, had previously given speeches urging white men to choke the Cape Fear with carcasses, if necessary to restore white supremacy. His violent rhetoric became a reality during the coup, as he and other white leaders succeeded in their goal of reclaiming power by force. This marked the first and only time in U.S. history that an elected government was overthrown by a coup d'etat. The aftermath was devastating. Wilmington's thriving black community was shattered. Those who survived the massacre lost their political power, their businesses, and for many, their homes. The coup was successful, and Wilmington was now firmly under the control of white supremacists. The city that had once been a beacon of black progress and political power had been destroyed, and the black citizens who had once thrived there were left with nothing. The cartoons that had flooded the streets in the months leading up to the massacre had done their job. They had created an atmosphere of fear, distrust, and hatred. They had taken the everyday anxieties of white citizens and amplified them until violence seemed like the only answer. And when the violence came, it felt justified. After all, they had been told for months that black political power was a threat, that black men were dangerous, that something had to be done. Have you seen the racist editorial cartoons of the late 19th and early 20th century? Isn't it true that they were made to subtly create racist beliefs and ideologies in people? in addition to brainwashing children who saw them? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on how racism is spread these days, and whether cartoons that are subtly racist should be allowed. Would you like us to make more videos? If yes, please support us by subscribing to the Black History Archives